evening. Welcome to tonight's PHSC program. It is our pleasure to host tonight Mr. Lorne Shields, who is a collector of Photographica and Cycliana, who has been building his collection for a little over 50 years. He has prepared a very special program for us tonight, and it is my pleasure to have him here with us. Without any further ado, Mr. Lorne Shields.
Greetings, fellow members of the Photographic Historical Society of Canada, friends and guests. My name is Lorne Shields, and I've collected early Cycliana of all types for over 50 years. I live in a suburb of Toronto and am still an active collector. These photos are from my personal collection, are all originals and of the era. The obligatory forthcoming is truly from my heart. I would like to thank the executives of the Photographic Historical Society for affording me this platform, and especially Celio Barreto, who assisted me immeasurably in setting this up. Bob Lansdale of the Photographic Historical Society has been of enormous value over many, many years. Cycling mentions Sharon Powell of Melrose Park, Illinois, who can be blamed for starting me on this proclivity of historic cycling photographic presentations, along with Bill and Linnea Leeming, who gave me the encouragement, loyalty, guidance, and platform for writing about historic cycling. I must also add Glenn Eames, Kirchen Moed, Scotford Lawrence, John Weiss, and Kerry Williams. The early days of photography and cycling have a special connection. Nisei for Niepce, considered the inventor of photography, was riding an early bicycle called a Dresienne in 1818, of which there are records that he made improvements to that machine. This is our earliest enjoined link. That was only the beginning. The time frame ranges from 1850 to circa 1925, almost 75 years or 3/4 of a century. I've selected a limited number of photos which will portray cycling's technical developments, social history, important photographic processes, and photographers. I've selected compelling imagery where possible, which helps to record this history. The bicycle and its developers had a profound effect on the world as we know it today. Think of the industries that would not exist without its creation and subsequent inventions or developments. Two integral automobile components are cycling inventions that are still in use today: James Starley differential gear and Rudge's rack and pinion steering. The genesis of the motorcycle, automobile, bus, truck, and airplane industries are a good place to start when realizing their roots were the bicycle. Mentioning but a few names such as Harley Davidson, George Hendy of Indian Motorcycles, General Motors, Dunlop, Dodge, Glenn Curtis, and the Wright brothers will likely all be familiar. The bicycle was a catalyst and an integral part of the female emancipation and suffragette movements, which forever altered Western society. The Good Roads movement was critical in developing and maintaining roads suitable for the automobile and long-distance autonomous travel. Mass urbanization without the bicycle would likely not have happened. The bicycle allowed people independent movement without schedules and away from dependence on water, train, or trolley routes. The responsibilities and ongoing maintenance costs for horse-based travel disappeared. Cycling was the biggest sport of the era, far more important than baseball or horse racing at the time. Cycle-related journalism had a huge effect on the publication industry. Some of these bicycles were on the road for many years. When a specific photo was taken is one thing, but without provenance, it could be another. I use contemporary images when most likely taken as my dating criteria. By the way, it's worthy to note that you could be looking at the change in fashion over that period of time. I now invite you to join me in the presentation itself. I'd like to introduce to you the Dresienne, the grandfather of the bicycle and the genesis from which it really truly all started. This was invented in Germany by Karl von Drais in 1818, and examples of his vehicles exist in private collections and museum collections today. There are no contemporary photographs. So this is a daguerreotype, and it's dated 1850. This is the earliest known manumotive cycling velocipede photograph that we know of up until this time. The provenance of this is some family photographs at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City, MoMA, and this is identified as Frank, his name is Frank B. James, taken at Cincinnati in 1850, and this is the velocity. When Mike Robinson helped me conserve this photograph, he pointed out that this type of work was often done by people doing genealogy later on. This work would have, this pencil script would have been done circa 1880s. But in the back of the plate, on the plate itself, it scratched the number 1850. And the example in MoMA reads about 1846. So we know that this is dated 1850. It's called a propeller, and it has cranks going to the back wheel from the hand levers. So the hand lever came down, there was a rod, it went to the rear axle, and it revolved the wheels. It's a half plate daguerreotype. So in the 1850s and 1860s, and came the quadricycles. This one is a Willard Sawyer type, a Willard Sawyer manufactured, and this was 4 wheels, and it was lever driven. There's no pedals, nothing. It's all there's no revolving pedals or cranks. It's all off the levers revolving the 2 rear wheels. This is carte de visite, and the photograph itself comes from England. And again, I date this about 1860, 62. So you've gone from that, you get into the early 1860s, about 1863, 64, they developed a vehicle called a Rantoon. This is a Rantoon type. It's not exactly a Rantoon, but it's about it's early 1860s, and he's got straps on over his shoes, so that he's got cranks that he can get the rear wheels to revolve. He's got a braking mechanism, and he's got a steering mechanism, and he's also got some rubberized material in between the steel rims and the wooden spokes and felloes. This is English, and another carte de visite, and notice there's a bicycle lamp there. So then we get to the big development, which was the cranked pedal. And this is what allowed the independent movement and steering and led to the development of the bigger and bigger wheels. This is called velocipede. We often call them bone shakers today. The company that produced this was a French company by the name of Compagnie Parisienne. And the person who given the credit was Michaud. So this is Compagnie Parisienne, late Michaud and Company, and the Olivier brothers bought that company. This is their English depot on Cannon Street. There's a subway station in London very near that exact address. And what's particularly interesting, again, it's a carte de visite, but what's particularly wonderful to have at this from 1869 is to have the catalog information there, so you can get the idea of which bicycles were being offered for sale. This here, the straight handlebars, these here bits lead to a rear brake mechanism, and it's just a very important and fun image. This is something I acquired this year. It's Happy New Year from the photographic chalet or the photographic shop of this gentleman. And here's his camera, and here's different little pictures of what's going on. There's like a race, a horse race going on. Some horses chasing a monkey, and that's likely the wife, the kids, and a soldier. This is at the time of the Franco-Prussian War of about 1870. And because it's a New Year's card, he's got his New Year's hat on. Again, a carte de visite taken in Paris. And this is one of the most important photographs in the collection. It's by Muybridge, and his nickname was Helios. Here's his signature, Helios, there. And what's particularly nice about this, Mechanics Hall, 1869 in San Francisco. There's lovely signage. It would have been a wood sign that was painted with velocipede riders, a horse rider in the back. There's another velocipede rider there. And this here, again, San Francisco. And it's quite interesting. When I first obtained the image, I thought that the ground was just dirt, but actually it's plank board. So, and there are two different types of velocipedes there. And it's my understanding that some people can figure out exactly what time it was, or more or less exactly what time it was, from the length of the shadow and knowing the position of the building. So this here photograph was quite a surprise doing the research. When I bought this, I didn't know really too much about it, other than it was an early pattern of a Michaud type velocipede. But it had these faults. So one of the faults was a stamp, and the other fault was this collection, Georges Sirot. And somebody wrote me that Georges Sirot was a pretty important person. Then I started to do the research, and it was his collection that was taken by the Bibliothèque Nationale of Paris and became the genesis, the core and the start of the French photographic collection at the Bibliothèque Nationale. It's quite an important image. It's nice. What I found interesting was this is the background. It's a screen, but it looks like this photograph may have been. I only say may have been because I don't know, but I found it interesting. It may have been taken outside, and there's a little prop to keep the vehicle straight up. That's a carte de visite. This was my most recent acquisition. You've got two of these springs. So I call this is just the first mountain bike because the roads were really bad. And here you have the shock absorbing springs that are on mountain bikes. And I would also think that there's a little bit of spring to this. This would have been solid bar, but there would have been a little bit of spring to that. What's historically important is that this is a Mrs. Moore from 421 Canal Street in New York City. She was only one of 100 female photographers about 1869 in the United States at that time. So here's a monocycle. This photograph was taken in Birmingham, England. And I really developed my own thought process on all these different vehicles. These people were trying to invent the new thing that was going to make them the Microsofts in the world. They didn't know where they were going. But what I developed the thought was that when these things were on the road, people didn't think they were particularly different, unusual, whatever. Of course, they would have seen them as different, but they wouldn't have been surprised at seeing them because these were the ages of invention. So this monocycle is quite a nice image. I think you can see the mechanism he fit inside. A carte de visite about early 1870s. Now this photograph is from Scotland, and I would call it a Macmillan type. Macmillan is someone that we know of that had a cycle that was recorded in history as being on the road, but there's no photographs of the actual vehicle. There's just records of it. This is 1869, well after Macmillan, but this could very well have been the type of vehicle that Macmillan was using. It's quite interesting and quite, take a look at the mechanism. Quite good. And there is Glasgow. Again, another carte de visite. Now, if I may, I have returned from my Orkney and Caithness tour, and having constructed a velocipede intended for photographic operations, I took it with me to test its capabilities in traveling uphill, carrying a dark tent and all the apparatus and chemicals necessary for the wet process. After traveling through Orkney and parts of Caithness, I am happy to say my velocipede has proved a decided success. So here's the vehicle, and it's important. You can see that there are rods holding up the tent. And there's a photograph of that person who owned that vehicle, and there's a photograph of the vehicle, a carte de visite. quite a pleasant surprise finding the research material after owning the image. And it's really nice when you have these links with photography itself and the history of photography and a vehicle. So this is a pure velocity tricycle, as we would, as people who collect velocipedes would understand a velocipede tricycle to be. But this is a photographer's, and here's a little advertisement for it, which is really pleasant. Now's the time to have stereoscopic and large views of buildings, landscape, groups, and other objects of interest, and ferrotypes, which are also known as tintypes, of children, horses, cats, dogs, or anything that can be kept still 2 seconds. That's a half of a stereoscopic car. It's American. And sorry, it's nice to see where this guy was traveling. So he's on the road, there's foliage, there's a nice backdrop there. So it's nice to see these types of images. It gives you a feel of being right there on the, it's in the outside at the time, taking you back 150 years. This I found very interesting. This is from Ohio, this image. And if you take a look, you'll see that there's a break in the front fork. So it was a velocipede that was made 1869-ish. And the velocipede had a wooden fork, but the fork broke. This book called Cycling Art, Energy, and Locomotion, Robert P. Scott. Well, this is Robert Scott, this is him. But what I found really interesting was the original engraving for the book used this photograph, superimposed the engraver or the etcher would have used this photograph to create this image for the book. The book was published by Lippincott in Philadelphia in 1889, so 20 years thereafter. But just to have this link between the broken fork and obviously no communication between the rider and the engraver. So I found that quite interesting. So this is an ambrotype, about 1860-ish. French. Mike Robinson helped me with this. Mike Robinson is a well-known member of our society. This has actually got a crack in the glass plate, and Mike put it together as best he could, and then I colored it in. So it's actually a faulted image, but it's still a great image. What I found lovely was how early the tricycle is. It's lever driven. There's your feet there propelling the vehicle, but it was also hand colored, and it's an outside scene. It's really quite nice. It's quite an attractive image. It's nice to share. So about 1872, this is the Club Velocipédique Lyonnais, which is the Lyon, France Velocipede Club. This is an important image. It's got photographic wise, it's nice that early. It's a large photograph. So you've got your photographer here, the Lyon here, the identification, and the members. There was 5 different images of the club, all came together. And you've got the early growth of the and development of this, which is a velocipede, up to starting to get the high wheels. So you've got them all together. So you've got a wooden spoked transitional velocipede, and then here you've got a rubber tired one. And then you've got Mayer built. Mayer was a famous Parisian maker. Early transitionals and some early high wheel bikes. So it's got early cycles. It's got a lovely outdoor scene. It's an important image. It's the kind of thing that can teach people a lot, and it preserves history that's quite important. So this is a transitional high wheel bike, transitional from a velocipede to a high wheel bike. Most likely Parisian, about 1872. And the developments, you can see the spring there, that cushioned the riders shaking and made it more comfortable to him. But if you take a look, it's really going to not be easy to see. But this is these are, it wasn't unique to these. It was common, but it's nice to see it. So here, coming off the front handlebar, is the cord going back to here, pulling it, and there goes on the brake. We studied this image, some people with clothing, and we don't think that he owned this bicycle. We think that he was an employee of a French person of wealth, but it's still very, very nice to see. And it's really a very uncommon early image. He doesn't show much pride in not there. He's just holding the object. So it's nice to see. It's nice to see how nicely he's dressed. And one of the participants in the audience today was kind enough to allow me to acquire this from his collection. So these are, now you're in England, and these are about 1872, 73 Smith and Starley aerials. And the aerial was really, it was very famous for this spider type wheel mechanism, because before that you had these very heavy wooden spoked wheels, and this made the bicycle far easier to pedal and travel. And the bicycles themselves started, I'm not sure, the backbone started to get hollow, and the bicycles were getting lighter and lighter. So this is a nice English image. It's got two very collectible bicycles, if one were to have it. And the tension, these were called tension wheels. So this would pull the wheel taut, and it also was on the back. The mechanism could pull on the back as well. So there's two images that came together, and I wrote an article on these two bicycles. These are really critical, important photographs, and they were bought about 10 years differently apart. And I'd like to thank eBay for letting me get both of them, because eBay's been a fabulous resource and allows me and others to get things from all over the world that one would not ordinarily have ever had the chance of obtaining. But this gentleman, Mr. Wall, this is his bike, and it says James Wall with first high wheel bicycle made in America, owned by C.H. MacDonald or McDudley. But when I owned this, there was really no provenance. Just all of a sudden, all you've got is a name, a photograph, and nothing to give it any importance or how to trace it. Years later, I got this image, and this is the power of photography. This is what we collect. This is, to me, what cycle collecting and photograph collecting is all about. But it could be with anything, whether it's sewing machines or trains or sports, whatever anyone collects. Because this photograph, these two photographs allowed me to do the research, and I did about a 10-page article, could have been less, but on the first commercial high wheel bicycles built in America. And here was what gave me the provenance. All of a sudden I've got a name, the New American Bicycle, C.J. Wall. So we've got a name. We've got where it was made, which was like a plumber. This guy in Boston was like a plumber. And where the machine may be seen, bicycles and tricycles made to order or repaired. So now we know that he was doing multiples of vehicles. He had a commercial retail establishment, built bicycles and tricycles, and was there selling a vehicle, and there he is. So that was really a treasure. What happened was the English bicycles were just so good and mass produced and so economic in comparison that, well, this Mr. Wall was building one, two at a time. He just couldn't compete. He didn't have the quality, he didn't have the componentry. He didn't have really very much of an infrastructure in which to buy from. And in America, when they started to become popular, these high wheel bikes, they were first seen in 1876 at the Philadelphia Exposition. But they started to become popular about 1878, 79. By about 1880, and there was, 2,000-3,000 in America by about 1880 or 81. And by 1880, 81, there were over 100,000 of these in England. And that was the economics of scale and being able to buy componentry for lesser. And I'll just point out that if you take a look at the wire spokes and how they are similar to what I showed you on the other vehicle. This is a hoot. This guy, if anybody wants to write it down, put H Pointer right here in Brighton. This guy did a whole series on cats. Now, there are crazy photographers. I don't know any, but here was his hobby, photographing cats. And here he is. We have a link with cyclists. So just there to enjoy. And here's the London to Brighton, but many people will be aware of the London to Brighton automobile run. It's still going on. Well, maybe not this year, but. So in 1851, 50 or 51 at the Crystal Palace, there was a gentleman, Willard Sawyer, and there's W.A. Sawyer, and he displayed his Sawyer quadricycles. This is his wife, or one of these is his wife. I'm not sure which one, but he was in Deal, and this photograph is identified about 25 years later than the 1850 image that I'm talking about. But he had changed from a maker of quadricycles to a photographer as well. So it's nice when you start to get these objects that are that have a direct link between cycling and photography as we collect it. English, carte de visite, and an important image. So this here is the Boston Bicycle Club. It's about 18 by 24 size. This here was, this photographer sold 3 images, and this is the first high wheel bicycle ride. This is one of the 3 photographs. I have one other of the first high wheel bicycle ride in America. And this was the Boston Bicycle Club. And the Boston Bicycle Club was the first high wheel bicycle club in the United States. It's a nice image. And it's mainly American. It's all English machines. They weren't making American machines really to any appreciable degree. But that Pollard image that you saw before, even though these guys are in Boston, these riders and clubmen were buying the English machines and that were imported. There were just such a difference in the quality, much higher. Photographed by American Photograph Company, and they advertised that they sold those photographs. So here's 1878. You start to see the more use of, this is a Woodbury type. So it's a Woodbury type for an early machine. English Coventry Machinist Company, which was one of the more well-known companies in England at the time. And this is a catalog using a Woodbury type. This is interesting technically, built entirely of weldless steel tube. Well, the weldless steel tube meant that these bicycles were very light. The front forks were like hollow type, and the backbone was hollow, and it made the bicycles really much lighter than the velocipedes of just a few years earlier. And this here is it's a carbon print. This is from France, and our Bob Lansdale has a specialist collection of carbon prints, and that's how I learned about this particular vehicle. Printed in carbon, permanent photograph. It's also a carte de visite. So this is a Coventry Machinist Tricycle. I got just give me a second. It's about 1878, and quite interesting for me, aside from the structure, just the coy little face, again, the forming of the image. This is lever driven, and eventually, or very soon thereafter, these became chain drive. So this was 1878, just a pleasant image and early developmental vehicle. And in this period of the late 1870s to the mid 1880s, tricycles were sold in huge numbers. People weren't used to riding two-wheel vehicles, and there was probably more adult tricycles sold than bicycles for the longest time in that early period. These two pictures, actually, the prints themselves, this is my technical work, my doing the work myself, but the image itself are, even though they appear to be two different sizes, they're actually the same size physically if you had them in front of you. What's important about this is a Woodbury type here, this example, and this is an albumin print. And it's not common to find, it's actually difficult to find albumin, the link, the fact that they use the exact same negative for the albumin print as for the Woodbury type. And here's some of the faulting in the Woodbury type because it dried out and was moved. But this is an indication. George Edlin being a bicycle racer, I don't need to tell you that, it's pretty obvious. So. Both, well, this is a carte de visite, and this is, that size is similar. It was published. There's just text on the back. Here's a opalotype, and the opalotype's about 1878. It's got a Singer. It's a Singer bicycle, but the opalotype was on opal type, like a translucent or opaque white glass. And this here is just a cherished image. It's in the original frame with the original glass. And there's the original framing. And the bicycle has a brake right here that goes into the ground to help slow the bike down. And this is all the experimentation. And up here is what they called, this was all open, and this was called an open head. And it wasn't very long, and even at that time they started to have this so that that spring didn't protrude out of the front. So it's an opalotype, about 1878, produced by Singer. And this is my favorite photo. It's not my most valuable by any stretch of the imagination. It's singularly my favorite photo. It's just got everything photographic and cycling that I would wish to have. His positioning, so he has his foot on the backbone so that he can kick with the rear leg and then get some momentum and then go lift himself up and get on the saddle. There's a Hill and Tolman bell, so it's got a good bell. He's got a Stanley hat, so you've got fashion you're looking at. And then there's some really interesting things that I don't know if they were purposeful or not. But if you just, what photography is pleasing to the eye as well when it can be. And here you can see there's a little bit of a curve there. But then if you take a look at the line on the back of his head, there's a curve there. And yesterday when I was working with Celio, he pointed out that there was a curve there that sort of mirrored. So you've got a whole image that has things that you don't concentrate on, but you see psychologically. Here's a little whippet behind the rider. And then Celio also pointed out to me that it's only the bicycle and the rider that's in focus. Everything else is out of focus. And he helped explain to me why, because it was the way the lens was open because of the lighting. So I like it more, but it was a favorite the way it is. So here you have extraordinary and sort of fun. You've got a little preacher. And with those high wheel bikes, once you were going and you hit a bump or you hit a rock or something, a dog in front of you, you went over that handlebar and you could have died. There are lots of cases of people dying. This is about 1885, and it's just a fun image. You've got a preacher. You've got this is an English image, and it was one of the first attempts to make a safety bicycle, a bicycle that was safer and safer than the high wheel bike. So the high wheel bikes that most people call penny farthings were really called ordinaries at the time, either high wheel bicycles or ordinaries. And then these started the name of this high wheel and penny farthing was never in use at the time. That terminology started in the early 1890s after the boom for that type of vehicle. But there's a nice image for sharing. So this is called an auto bicycle. These wheels here are propulsion wheels. There's a band there and there's no chain. When they were developed with the chain, they then got the name auto bicycle. So these two images are Scottish. They're about I would say 1880, and it's quite interesting to have these images outside, and they were acquired in England, but they're Scottish images. You've got a wheel on each side, and in case you were falling backwards, you had this trailing wheel that hit the ground, so you could go forwards and put your feet out and stop yourself from hurting yourself. But if you went backwards, if you didn't have this trailing wheel, you could have done some serious damage. So this is a gear driven. So if I may, there's no chain, no levers. There's gears there, and the gears are what propelled the bike forward. Obviously, Stonehenge, it's a great image. Any focus, anything that's a little blurred there was the movement of the camera. Movement of the riders. But there's a nice rare tricycle, I would say, mid 1880s. And this is a 2-track, so this kind of tricycle got the name 2-track because it had this here called the backbone, top tube, and it was, if you went over the ground, it only left 2 tracks, whereas if it was in the center, it would have been 3 tracks. So this was a 2-track. But what's special about this is this guy was traveling with his camera. Nice English carte de visite. And then this is Starley Coventry tandem, similar to the one in the promotional. This one's a little different construction. And if you take a look at this, he's got his bugle. So they didn't have sophisticated ways, because if a bunch of riders were out on the road, they used similar communication as the cavalry officers. So it was quite common to see cyclists with horns. Again, another English image. And this here logo is for the Pickwick Bicycle Club. And I do have his information, but the Pickwick Bicycle Club is the oldest operating bicycle club in the world. They still hold their meetings today. And this here is a gravure, which is a type of photographic process. And Harvard, that's the university, 1882. And I've seen a lot of gravures, and I never had many chances to buy them. I never was really interested in them. But I did like this one because what I read about gravures was you could tell around the edges of some of the images that they had an extra bit of lineage to help with the definition. So this gives you an excellent example of that extra lineage, sorry. And this here is a town called Itham, I-G-T-H-A-M. They pronounce it item, I-T-E-M. That's how we would pronounce that. That's how they pronounce the word. That's how we would write it. Here's the tricycles in front. So here's a lady, two ladies, and they would have been on this sociable. And here's the man, that would have been his. What's sort of fun is you take a look, it says commercial and bicycle hotel. Well, why that was important was hotels either catered to cyclists or they catered to the equestrian crowd. And it was these people defined their commerce with their signage. So this is nice to have the identification. And also, here's the little kids that we're looking at. So you get images that you like. And I've just got one quick story that I wish to share with everyone. My bookkeeper came up and I was so proud of this image and I really liked it. And I showed it to Brenda and I said, Brenda, what do you think of this? It's got all this, it's got all this. And her comment was, I really like the shadow of the trees across the road. So photography allows us to get a feeling and a different view. You can look at that picture a number of times, but here you've got it so that everybody sees something different and they can get an enjoyment out of the image for what it is that suits them. It was a nice story. And here's a most incredible tricycle. How this thing worked, not very much, except photography recorded this. But the mechanical genius that created this thing, it's 4 wheels, 1 wheel, 2 wheel, and 2 stabilizing wheels in the center. But how this lady got this thing to work, well, I'm sure it worked. How this guy conceived how this thing could work, the guy had to be a real mechanical genius or opinion. Nice Victorian fashion too. If you take a look, he's wearing some interesting clothing. English, about 1884, 85, something in that range. So here you have a case where when you're a collector and you find images that are used elsewhere, it sort of gives you a pride of ownership. So this is a stereoscopic card. And whenever I do any scanning of my stereo views, obviously I take the full thing, but I also, when I show them or present them or like to present them, I always show the edge to prove that it's not just anybody could crop it within, but it's always nice to let people know the originality of what your object is. So here it was used on the lake, and here's the identification. It was in the Wheelman magazine, and I think this was 1884 or 1885. In 1884, there was a meet in Harrogate in England, and there were photographers at the meet, obviously, and they had all kinds of different races, it was really a huge event. So you can look at the tricycles, that was for a race. But what I really liked about this for us as photography collectors, these guys were all there from the different clubs. But look at the different cameras. It's phenomenal. One, obviously, everybody can count, but give me the indulgence, please. 2, 3, 4. There's his small camera right there, partially covered. 5 and 6. So you got 6 different cameras. So the industry must have been phenomenal for cameras at the time. So this, you know, just to have this image without it being part of the catalog of the collection in itself is not cycling related, but it's wonderful when you've got something and it's got its own provenance. And here's, now you've got, remember the extraordinary, I hope, that I explained to you? Well, this here is what they call the kangaroo. Now you're getting bicycles that are lower. You now just see some chain driven, and there's like gearing. So you've got this here with a larger tooth wheel and a smaller tooth wheel, so you could go faster. And one revolution could get this going around more than one time. So that's called a kangaroo, a cabinet card. Sorry, a carte de visite, about 1885, 86. And here's another high wheel safety bicycle. This is called a facile. And I won't tell you why the picture's got the camera in it. But this guy, Heberhart, became the head of the League of American Wheelmen for the state of Indiana. He was a pharmacist, and I have other pictures from it. But nothing is, for me, as profound as having like a difficult bike to find, a rare bicycle, and having a camera that's so in your face. It's just wonderful. That's a cabinet card. That's probably about 1886, 87. And here's a Canadian image. This is from Goderich, Ontario. It's a Starley tricycle. But this to me is the pleasures of owning photography. This little kid's as cute as could be, and got her doll, an important Goderich photographer with a rotary tricycle. Again, mid to late 1880s. Now, this is another case of like an important photographer. This is likely Canada's most important 19th century photographer, William Notman, who had studios in the United States and in many places in Canada. He was the person who was asked to take the photographs at the, and may not have been the only one, but I know he did stereo cards at Philadelphia in 1876. So it's a great collage. For those of you who aren't familiar with this type of photograph. So these are obviously photographs. I don't need to tell you that. But the pictures in the background, these were hand drawn. These were, these photographs were cut out and mounted on, and then the photograph was taken. But so that's how that was taken. It was one photograph taken of maybe 30 different photographs mounted, cut out and mounted. But what was interesting about this, here you've got a sociable, here you've got a tricycle, you've got a star bicycle, and you've got, you know who the club is? It's Notman, it's identified 1885. But the important thing, one of the important things for me is this here rider here. I have this here photograph as without the bike, just his torso. And it's a carte de visite. So now I know that these photographs had a dual purpose. He was selling the collage photographs, of course, but he was also selling the individual carte de visites and or cabinet cards. So it was a nice thing to be able to find and put together. Again, looking for important photographers. This was Negretti and Zambra, who were at the Crystal Palace in London, England. They were one of England's more important photographic houses. This is a lovely image to have gotten because it's not only got the bicycle racers, it's got all of their signatures on it. This is a very large photograph, and it's got all the information on it. So here's F.J. Osmond that's likely him. And here, if you take a look, you've got the string for the start of the race. It's a nice image. Early shows the people that were holding the cyclists up. So this here is a slide of a tricycle. This is in Massachusetts about 1888, 1889. And I selected it as an example of another type of photograph. So here we have a slide, but not only do we have a slide, it's colored. You've got an animal, and there are other images that I've seen that have this exact scene with the tree and the light post. So it's nice. And it's all like hand colored. So there's an example of the slide. So here's like visually impressive. This here tricycle was called a Giant. And this here gentleman was G. Lacey Hilliard, who's a famous racer and became an entrepreneur from the sport. But it's you take a look at the wheels going around. They were trying to get, if you went around one time, you went further, pi times diameter, and they were trying to win races and trying to develop and invent and do whatever they could. It didn't mean that this guy couldn't beat him, but they were trying everything they could to make the next thing, to win the races, to get the promotions, to win at the sport. So H.S. Owen was a bicycle vendor and maker in Washington, D.C. in 1885. This here imported the first safety in the United States. That's what they're talking about. And that's a rare rover image. Very few images of that vehicle. But it became really interesting. We gave a photo at the Cycle History Conference. We were at the Smithsonian Institution, and I had found the reference where that bicycle eventually went back to the Smithsonian on display. And I was trying to find out whether or not they still had it in their collection. But we found out that they did not, and that it had been given back to Owen. So these are different types of vehicles. They're difficult to see. This is like a chair, and somebody was behind it, but they were pedaling. Anyways, here's the next part. Builder, the first ladies in the world. I will show you that bicycle in a little bit, but it's out of time order, so I have it a little bit later on. It's a pretty important image because of different vehicles and the identification. So, and the first rover, 1885, that's the text for the identification of that vehicle. So here we have a cyanotype, and what's interesting about this is that this cyanotype, whoever owned the image originally, also had an identical albumin print made of that image. And you see, we were talking about earlier about horns. There's a horn there, there's a horn there, and there's another horn there. It's American, about 1886, 87. It's a lovely cyanotype, which was another type process. Now here's another picture of a facile. And I showed you the other facile picture with the camera. But what's important about this for cycling is the vehicle. But for photography collectors, here you've got a rare vehicle, but here it says Weston, photographer. And there he is, F.G. Weston, agent. So he was not only a photographer, he also sold bicycles in Bangor, Maine. This here person is a famous rider. First of all, it's nice to see the costume. He's wearing a bodysuit. But this is George M. Hendy, who was amateur champion bicyclist of the United States. His medals are in Springfield, Massachusetts now, but he became Indian Motorcycles. That guy there was the starter of and business manager and owner of Indian Motorcycles. Very important person. This guy, John Stout, what was interesting about this is he was an itinerant advertiser for this Star bicycle, the one with the small front wheel here and the larger rear wheel. This was lever driven, and he's trying to show how safe it is. He could go down these steps and not go over. You couldn't do that with a high wheel bike. But this gentleman Stout went around to all the different states, not every one, but different states as an advertiser for Star bicycles, and got this publicity. And this particular image is he was in Detroit, and there's other pictures. There's a famous one of him going down Capitol Hill steps in Washington, D.C. So the photographic link is you've got somebody who's traveling and having photographs done locally and having a record made of his feats. And here's that Owen, here's that H.S. Owen. So here he is here, and here's these ladies' bicycles, these early bicycles. And if you take a look, this tube comes down and then it goes straight across. That type of construction didn't last very long. It wasn't practical. But there it is. There's earliest Washington, D.C., about 1887, 88, in that time frame. And look at the costume. They're all so prim and proper and whatever. The child's nice. Just balances the image. And it's, you know, it's got some links and some provenance, and it's a nice story. Albumin print. It's like an imperial cabinet card. So this is an important tin type. Well, the importance for cycling historians is that it's got two stars, Star bicycles with the small front wheel and the levers, a couple of high wheel bikes, and a kangaroo. But for photography collectors, it's an identified tin type, AD Terhune. But in the mat around it, it's got Nanuet, New York, and 6:50 something in the morning when it was taken. So it's identified time and signed. And it also came with a photograph of Terhune within a paper mount. So it's just an important piece of photographic history, and it blends nicely with cycling history. And this was selected just to show the broad use of the tricycle and cycling. This is military in Spain. It's about 1887, 88 in that range. Look, you can just, it's wonderful to start to collect these different images from all these different countries. If you had enough of them, you can really tell which countries, not in every case, but which countries these people are from. And then I'm not sure whether I could say it really looks Spanish, but it sure looks like it's got a nice European feel to it. So, but it is Spain, it's certain. And this one I've used previous in other presentations, but obviously the White House. This is what, again, a sociable. Here's just a tricycle, and it's also a nice image. So you've got you're capturing history, you're capturing different vehicles, and it's something that all people can relate to, which is famous buildings and being a tourist and being present and having your image taken. Just nice little touches, the people in the background. And this here, for cycling people, that's a 2-speed crypto hub, which is quite a rare hub in its own, on a baby extraordinary. But what's wonderful about this is the text that was handwritten. I attribute my success to the fact that all my life I have never used alcohol in any form. I've never touched tobacco. I go to bed at 10 o'clock every night, and no monkey business.
No, dude, you gotta get out more.
Poor guy.
So military cycling, I think a lot of people know that the paratroopers in World War II landed with bicycles behind the enemy, I think at Normandy. But it started in the 1880s. This is the Bicycle Corps Victoria Rifles of Canada in 1887. This here signage is actually the light lens, the glass lenses on the light. This is in front of the Montreal Amateur Athletic Association, which that club was the first Canadian club to join the League of American Wheelmen in Providence, Rhode Island, in Newport, Rhode Island in 1881. And anyways, it's just a wonderful image. And the historian for the Victoria Rifles did not know that they had a bicycle corps. So nice to see people, nice condition. And Rowe, famous name for many in many respects, on a Columbia bicycle, racing Ralph Temple. That was Ralph Temple. And this here is 1 mile professional American championship race, Hartford, September 13th, 1888, instantaneous. Well, I think it's obvious, but it still should be pointed out for everyone. These riders are not out of focus, whereas the participants that are static, they are, because the camera panned and was able to capture the riders, and it was the panning effect that got the people who were static, it got them blurred. And this was all in the attempt to get faster speed films and capture moment until, which is still a process that we seem to have mastered today, but it wasn't easy then. If you remember the tricycle, velocity tricycle, it said you had to keep still for 2 seconds. Well, take a look in 18 years, 17, 18 years, we were able to get it virtually instantaneously, but for sure not 2 seconds. And that's how chemicals and lights and speeds of camera lenses, this is a good example of what they were trying to achieve. And this is use of photography in advertising. Allen Ginter was a famous American tobacco company, and Richmond straight cut #1 cigarettes are the best. So there's your advertising. She's actually nicely dressed. She's got her bugle. It's just a nice image. These are cabinet cards. There's, I think, about 20 in the set of the large size cabinet cards. It's a nice image. It's just nice t-shirt. This here is a photographer's tent. So here you've got the opening for the sunshine. Here you've got the signage. You've got the bicycles. The bicycles themselves generally considered female cycles or cycles for females. But this is a bit interesting to have the cushioning spring down at the bottom of the seat tube. It's a nice photographic touch. And here's another photographic related picture. Originally, when I bought this, I thought it was an outhouse, but I was corrected, and glad I was. This little shack was where he developed his ferrotypes or tintypes. There's examples of the tintypes likely drying outside, and there's the result. You've got your connection with cycling and photography. It's an important image in its own right. And this here photograph, I have the information when I acquired it, was taken by a gentleman by the name of N.H. Van Sicklen, who wound up being a publisher in Chicago, and that track is in Chicago. And it was done about 1888, 1889. But if you look at the racers and you think about the horse racing that you go to today, you can learn a little bit in the similarities. So they were marked so that anybody, no matter where they are on the track, could see which rider was which. So here, this guy has a long sleeve shirt. This guy has no sleeves on his shirt. This guy's got a white on a black cap. This guy's got a white with a black star on a white cap. This guy's got no stars or anything on his cap. So that's how they would identify the riders in Chicago. And having the riders come at them allowed, I guess, a little bit more of the speed to be compensated for in taking the picture. But it's been a pleasure to own and acquire, and that came with other famous racers. That particular picture came with a small group that was quite important as well. And here you have an early Kodak camera. I think this is, I'm not sure, somebody can please help me. I think that was a Kodak #2 camera, and it was an early. He doesn't have any brakes. You didn't need brakes when you were racing. So the brake mechanism would have been right there, mounting onto the spoon to stop the wheel. But it was the fact that it was a Kodak camera that was important. And here you have another different type of vehicle. And this is called a Springfield Roadster. And you've got pedals and crank arms that are there, and the same thing parallel over here. There was no revolving motion. These went up and down, up and down, up and down. And again, it was called a Springfield Roadster. He was a Canadian, and it came with another photograph of a Canadian championship. A Canadian champion. They had been in Detroit together and won some medals. So this was taken in Stratford, Ontario. Nice contacts, nice little trophy. Everybody should have one, I guess. And this one I just chose. It's a nice image, very large, but I liked it for the costume. I just felt it was fantastic. The tall hats, you can almost hear the noise and feel the sound and everything. It's just so wonderful to see the positioning. This is about 1880. Sorry, about 1891. But so Dunlop in 1888 had reinvented the pneumatic tire. And between the diamond frame, which is what they call the diamond frame, between the diamond frame and the pneumatic tire, that's what revolutionized the bicycle again and caused the next huge boom from the very, very beginning of the 1890s right through the end of the 90s. It was a humongous industry because of that. And this was selected just for the graphics.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the kids look so cute. I mean, this is Peterborough, England, but the hats, I mean, it's just camera. I wonder what he's got in his hand. Has he got the bulb in his hand?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the bulb in his hand. So just for sharing, just a nice cycling related photography image. And this is another tintype, but it's uncommon to get tintypes with in stereoscopic, and this is uncut. So, and you've got your different clearances here for the amount of space, so you know it's a stereoscopic tintype. And here you've got, again, cycling limited interest, but photographically, you've got a detective cam, which detective cameras in themselves are rare. Just to see it, it's one thing. To have a photograph with the one is sort of fun. On the road, just enjoying themselves. So this will give you some idea of the crowds that they were getting for these bicycle races. This is Springfield, Massachusetts. This is where Hendy was riding, and he lived in Springfield. This photographer was very important, sports photographer. George H. Van Norman was his name. And here it's all dated. You've got the Hampden Park. And Hampden Park is where they had held the races in Springfield for a number of years. But the huge record, you've got an important photographer, you've got a huge crowd, and it was a great event. It's a large size image. It's all. So you've got where his studio is. And this here's a bike store, obviously. And these guys looks like they're delivering newspapers, if you ask me. But why I selected this is, see, I don't think it was in that store. I just don't know. I looked and looked and looked. But over here, this word reads Kodak, going down, K-O-D-A-K, K-O-D-A-K, for sale. So must have been a photographer either to the left or to the right. I'm really not sure, but two are together, and that's what counted. Victor, which was Overman Wheel Company, was an important maker of bicycles. And here, this is two separate photographs. I stitched the image together, but you've got a lady in bloomers, and you've got her with two different poses. So this is part of the emancipation of women, and then just wearing the clothes that they wanted to wear, not what men felt they should wear, or the dictates of society were. And this I selected just, sure, it's a photograph, obviously, but it just gives you that feel of, this is in California, but it gives you the feel of what the roads were like, what a couple going down the road were. There's the carriage in the background. So, you know, it's not a rare photograph, but it's a nice photograph. You can get a lot of pleasure looking at that. You can see her clothing. And here's a ladies' camera club. And on the back of this photograph, these are numbered, right? 4, 5, 6, 7. The camera there, camera there. One more. One. Oh, camera there. There's also a purse. And if you get into, like, you're looking for social history, these are called bicycle purses. They use them, horse folk, lady folk used them, and cyclists used them. And why they were called bicycle purses is on the back side, could have been anything, steel bead, cloth, design, glass, but on the back side was leather or cloth with no pattern, so that it didn't wear into the lady's clothing. And you've got your little bit of patriotism, maybe out for 4th of July. But it's really great having the image with the people identified in the back. Not all of them, about 4 or 5 of them are identified. And this was an exact opposite. Photo cyclists on the Hempstead Road. So we don't have a photographer taking the picture. We have an artist doing a sketch. In the 1860s, they used to have, and 70s and 80s, they had a lot of artists that were members of cycle clubs, and they did pictures of the cycle touring. But anyway, so you've got a camera here, 2 others. There's a camera, and I believe that that's his camera case. So it was just nice to get something different instead of having a photograph with cyclists, that you have a sketch. And here's another just treasure of an image, in my opinion. The Eagle Bicycle Cafe. You've got signage. You've got cold soda, coffee, donuts, root beer, soda, cigars. It's just social history that's captured. That's called an Eiffel Tower bicycle. Actually, there were quite a few of those around. End of the 19th century. And this is a Canadian image, but I got this because it's got a photograph in the photograph. So that's Queen Victoria. This is the Jubilee, 1897. He's got his bike all decked up for the FET, F-E-T-E. I call them FET bikes. And there's a beaver for Canada. Here it is from Toronto, 748 Yonge Street. Here's a rarity, which is a native American Indian. This is American Midwest. There's a bear skin, there's a horse, and there's the bicycle. But I believe the way he's dressed, he probably lived in the conditions that we portray in our minds that the natives lived in. But this would have been like a store that he would have come out of. And this bicycle was likely belonged to a person in the store. And so you've got a coloration of a albumin image. You've got rare subject matter. You've got a bicycle. You've got something that photography's captured something that you wouldn't really conceive that you'd come across. There's a monocycle. I bought this image about 6 months ago and it's sitting in the United States because I can't get it across the border. The guy wouldn't deliver it. So this is a low-res copy and I can't wait to get the image. So I'll be able to do a high resolution and tell you all about when, where, how, why from the signage, but it's still a wonderful image to share. This is photography related. Well, first of all, you can do the obvious. It looks like she's testing a rock. There's the bicycles, and then see the white here. And when I first saw the image, I thought, oh, it's horrible. Somebody screwed up and they didn't put any emulsion or did the camera wrong or something was wrong. And then one of the people brought up that they could have had the camera on a ledge and that picks up the edge of the ledge. And now you've got a picture that isn't faulted, but you can enjoy it more because you understand. You can understand what's captured that image. And this is sort of fun. You've got your timer, your starter, your racer, and your trainer. That's about 1897, 98, Warsaw, New York. This is the opening meet of the Cameron Highlanders Bicycling Club, November 1898. They were on their way to Khartoum. It's sort of wealthy people in England. They finance these different troops. So this is an example of some wealthy guy. He's got all of his members of his troop decked with bicycles. So it's nice, very large image. Again, capturing history. And you never see that kind of scene again. This one I selected because, first of all, it's a German club. And it's nice. It's the way they positioned the male, female, and the clothing. But it's all just so neat, so tidy, so balanced. And then for a little bit of fun, you've got the people up in the bandstand. So when you're acquiring these images, you buy them for different reasons. If they please you, sometimes you don't know why, but they're pleasing. That's what it's about. And this one is made with Primo Rapid Reticular Lens. And I've got a series, not a series, but multiples of pictures that were given out for promotions to show the quality of the photograph that would be taken if you bought the camera. A little bit of interesting is you see that smoke. Well, he's got a gun in his hand, and that smoke is the start of the race. And this is also important important photography-wise. But this here is Platino paper, I think you read that. But it says toned with Aristo single toner, new simple method of producing fadeless photos. And I could tell you that photograph is absolutely dead perfect. So and it's about 120 years old. So it was good advertising. It was a good product, but so it's a nice thing to complement cycling with photography. You know, this won't surprise you. It's a bicycle racer on a bit of an angle. But what's special about this is who this person is. Is it Cycling Yours, Alisov B, Alia, whatever, B Rowe. That's A.V. Rowe, who became the aircraft pioneer and built Avro aircraft. And actually, I had found that on an English auction, and I actually outbid the Rowe family. I guess they weren't that interested, but that was sort of interesting. The A.V. Rowe. And when Rogers was down, they could have called this guy. This is, you know, you have occupationals. I have a whole collection of occupationals. But how do you get any better than that? And there's probably a bike shop. Not that he necessarily came from there, but I just thought it was phenomenal photography. And that's pretty simple. You got a guy with his camera, bulb in his hand, ready to take a picture. And you've got a lady with a coy smile. She's all happy. She's got her camera. And then you've got what cameras are meant for. George Daniels, crime, bicycle thief, white, Peabody, Massachusetts, his age, his height, 6'1", weight, medium. It even has who arrested him. Quirk, Fitzgerald, and Wells. Sent to HOC, House of Correction, for 1 year. Doesn't he look innocent? This one I really liked. It was an inside photograph of, obviously, they're selling bikes, but also Victrolas. And these are all the wax cylinders. And what was particularly nice about this is the use, how the camera picked up the tone, because they didn't have they weren't using flash photography. But it's really a nice image as an image, never mind the bicycle or the horn. It's just how they used it inside a store I found very interesting. And this is Boer wartime. She's a nurse. Irish nurse. And this is Lord Robertson right here. So she's got her photograph on her fet bike showing Lord Robertson. So you've got a nice nurse. That's not Red Cross. It may have been a Red Cross, but somebody asked me once if that was like the Red Cross we know. No, that was just a nursing symbol. And this is another photograph that was just brought into the equation just to enjoy the photography. Just, you can almost taste the watermelon. And this I selected for the photographic process because it's a studio shot, you can see that. But they've also formed the background in an Art Nouveau framed image. And it made this guy quite small in relation to what they could have done. But it's nice how you can see different photographers doing different things with their backgrounds. And that horn is quite interesting. If you see it, it goes around like that. And there's a light. And this is Molenbeek in Brussels. That's a cabinet card. And this is a platinum prints. And I acquired a whole album. I think there's 7 photographs with cycles in the album. So I just scanned the pages, and it just brought in to show another process, which is platinum prints. It happens to be a German album. The size of the pages is about 14 inches by close to 13, 14 inches. And this is another just photograph that was selected for the composure of the image. Just how pleasing the image is, not the rarity of the cycles. Just a pleasant photographs. And this is Robert W. Service, Rhymes of a Red Cross Man, and a very famous Canadian. So this is an original photograph of him up in the Yukon.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely know autochrome. This is an autochrome, and it's a stereoscopic card. And this is one of the earliest forms of color photography. And this here, they used, when they were using autochromes, they used corn, ground corn coloration in the process. So that's another rare type of photography that I've tried to show with cycles. And there's a happy camper, English, circa 1900, 1905. He's got his camera here. It's not working too hard. What's a little interesting, I never noticed it before, was they both have the same type of hat on, narrow rim, whatever. He's got a cigarette in his mouth. This here, Sonia, one of our publishing editors, did an article about the pandemic. And this here is a busy something in the flu epidemic and I'll get you the name. I have it. But this is a photograph. There's the tent that they were all lined up for. This is in 1916. And this is mid 1920s. And this was just selected just for the graphic image of what photography is all about. It just captures stuff. So it's just brilliant photography. Nice subject matter as well, but just brilliant photography. And here's a guy on top of pyramids in Egypt, obviously near Cairo, Grand Pyramid. But what was special about this is, there he is with his photography. That's it, folks. That's all I got for you.
Brilliant.
My goodness. What a great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lorne. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Oh, wow. That was really fascinating.
Thank you very much.
Now, I want to get myself one of those sociables. You know, unfortunately, I don't think
nothing-
anybody makes them anymore, right?
Yeah, there's people that can make that for you.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Use the side for the groceries, right?
Yeah. So what do I do to?
So just go down and stop sharing. And there you go.
And there's still people here?
Oh yeah.
Surprisingly, yes. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's fantastic. So I'd like to invite people to unmute your microphones if you have a question for Lorne. Not a lot of questions about the presentation in the chat, but a lot of thank yous from people who had to leave early. Enjoy the presentation. Thank you for sharing your wonderful collection. Thank you for a great presentation. I always learn something every time you share. Right? And amazing collection. Thank you, Lorne. And another interesting show. So again, wow, fantastic. Really something. Really something. Well, I'd like to invite members of the audience. Would you like to ask Lorne a question?
Lorne, I've got a couple of questions for you. It's Clint. How you doing?
Yeah.
I assume, I'm just a stab in the dark here, that you're still acquiring photographs.
Very much so.
And so when
There's a guy there from Georgia who will attest to it.
So if people are out and about there and they happen to come across a nice image with a bicycle in it, bicycle related, tricycle related, they should probably contact you. You might be interested in acquiring it, that type of thing.
I'm sure. Singles or collections.
Good. I suspect we'll post your contact information through our website.
Thank you very much.
No worries. Just a sort of a second question. You touched upon it in your talk. These ordinaries, these penny farthings, as we shouldn't call them, kind of dangerous, huh?
Only if they fall down.
Only if you hit the ground, right? Yeah. Okay. Was there any sort of you collect all sorts of bicycle collectibles. Was there any sort of notion of an early bicycle helmet, or did they just rely on divine guidance?
They started, I don't know specifically when, but I do know that they had these helmets when they were going around with the motorcycle pacing. And so if I had to just guess, I'm not saying this is correct, but by the early 20th century, when they were having these 6-day bike races, and they started to wear, and they had helmets on as inclusive with these guys who were following behind these motorcycles. So I'm not sure if that was the start. I would doubt if it was. I'm not capable of answering that accurately.
Thank you, Lorne.
You're welcome. And I don't even know where I could even find the answer to that. There's some people here that might know, but
Lauren, the Singer bicycles, were they made by the same company that
No.
made the sewing machines?
No.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, how you doing? Good. And also with the tricycles, were they steered through the small rear wheels? Is that how they were done?
Sorry?
How were the tricycles steered through the small
Some of them
rear
through
wheels?
front wheels, some of them through rear wheels. Probably later on, they almost all became front wheel steering, but in the beginning, there was all types of tricycles. Rear steering.
I have a question. Raise my hand. May I? We saw images of bicycle racers. So obviously there were people that were going full speed ahead with this invention. And I see that in your background you have one of these ordinaries, which is quite wonderful. Please, please, please don't race around in it. Just, let me breathe a little bit. I know you want to race, but was racing the motivation for the continued development of of bicycles, or were there other reasons?
Well, the marketing and camera photography and cycle touring, there was all kinds of other reasons. But probably the biggest thing that spurred on the development of the bicycle was racing and advertising to go with it. Because if you won the race, I think, was it Ford or General Motors, win on Sunday, sell on Monday, these people would, they would advertise which races they were involved in, which they won, what position they came in. So the development of the bicycle, a humongous part of that was specifically for the winning of races and trying to be the best, the fastest, the lightest, safest, whatever. So that sort of covers it. But that was the main focus. But then if you had a need for just something as a sidebar, then if you had a need for a tennis clip, and this is for real, I'm not inventing this. So if you had a need for a tennis clip, so other things came into the equation. Cycle touring became a need. So you didn't have racers developing cycle touring needs. So it was marketing, but the biggest single development was because of racing. All those early high wheels, the bigger the wheel, the lighter the wheel, the spokes, the hollow tubing, the bearings. I would say the vast majority of the development was because of racing.
Lauren, speaking of your background, what is that eye candy that you've got just over your right shoulder?
What, the high wheel bike?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a high wheel bike built in Toronto in about 1889, built by a company called T. Fane and Company. And, it's a 52-inch. So,
is that the one that was on Ponthon?
No, the one on Ponthon was not part of my collection. That is part of my collection.
See. And the sign in behind?
It's not a sign, it's a crate. It was a crate that held a bicycle. And the bicycle that was held in it was A. Zimmerman. And Zimmerman was the most important 19th century American rider. And he was quite a famous guy. And that's like, if you had a pair of boxing gloves and they were signed by Cassius Clay, that's what you would want. So that's he was probably the most famous of all the American racers. A. Zimmerman. rode for Raleigh actually as well.
Hmm.
Came from Freehold, New Jersey. As
Out
did
of out of a barn or something.
crate came out of a barn. Yes, that's where I got it from. And then it was conserved by a proper conservator in Toronto. That was
It's amazing that a piece of, packing material survived. How old is that, Lauren? That Zimmerman crate?
probably about anywhere from probably about 1893 to 1905, whether he was racing using, he went around for the company, so whether he was racing still with a bike in that, but that was a shipping crate for a bicycle.
Right.
Wow.
I have an incredibly elementary and stupid question to ask.
No such thing.
It's over my head, I can assure you. Go on.
How in the world did you get on top of one of those bicycles except with a ladder?
Well, remember I showed you the picture of the guy with his foot a bit up on the backbone of the, if you send me an email, I can send you a picture. But simply, there was a footstep on the backbone. You kicked the ground with your feet. You got some inertia. You had enough inertia to keep you upright. That's physics. And then you pulled yourself up onto the saddle. That's verbally.
Okay. And how many people died in the process of trying to get on the bike? Was this a popular suicide method?
There's actually some people here who could answer that question. Who've had near-death experiences. I can assure you, it's not a.
I had a question for Lorne, if I could, please. This is Carl Edwards.
Thank you, Carl. Go ahead.
Yes. Hey, Lorne, how are you doing? It's been a long time.
Find the bell?
I'm not sure. I still have some bells, so maybe one was one that you sold me 35, 40 years ago. But I had a question about your ordinary, your Canadian ordinary. Is that a rational? Because it looks like it's got a 24-inch rear wheel. If the front wheel is a 52, so it would be a late rational high wheel safety bike. Is that right?
No, I don't think so. I think it's a 20-inch wheel. I think it's just I know I have a photograph, Carl, of building high wheel bikes in Canada. But there was the longest time that we didn't believe that high wheel bikes were built here. But that was for the Toronto Bicycle Club. And I have photographs, and they're all just standard high wheel bikes. Pretty well all standard high wheel bikes.
I see. Thank you.
Lauren, you're off camera. Can you maybe slide your bump? Yeah, there you are. Here, thanks. We can see you again.
That was a great question, Carl. Thank you.
Jack has a question.
Yeah. Carl Edwards, are you the Carl Edwards that were in the California Wheelman back in the 70s where we had lots of great rides?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Oh, this Jack?
That's really something to see you here and now, after all those decades have passed.
Right. I sort of got out of the high wheel bike collecting, and now I'm sort of getting more interested again.
Yep, those are the days where Jerry Grulke was the captain, and we had some fabulous rides with our period costumes on.
Exactly.
It was really something.
It was a lot of fun.
If I can add something about photography, what it's done for me really has made me some special friends over the years. And Carl can attest to this. I don't remember exactly when I had communicated with him last, but I'm a collector in case people don't know this. And Carl is an artist, and didn't write letters, he drew letters. And I was going through the list of who I could possibly invite. And I remembered Carl, he's such a grand artist. It's difficult to explain. And he's got the driest, nicest sense of humor. And I said, I've got to write Carl, maybe he'll join in. And he did, and he wrote me back, and I didn't answer his question really. I sent him scans of his drawings. And that's what this hobby has done for me as a person. And I don't want to make it anything small. There's a person from California that's on the screen now that's a special friend, and somebody from Georgia and Glenn up in North. But cycling history, photography, and all this ancillary thing that has been a part of my life has been the treasure and the pearl of my life. Because obviously we all have stuff, we've all enjoyed our hobby. But if you think about our lives, how much they've been enriched by our hobby, be it photography or the aspects of photography that interest you, it's given us instantaneous friends that's been able to drop barriers where if you meet them under any other circumstance. So I'm not getting soapy, but I'd like to tell everybody how important the friendships are that I've made in collecting are to me personally. And I'd like to thank all of you, but there are many of you who I know, and I think it's just fabulous that you're here and it's part of our lives. So thanks everyone for that, allowing me to say that.
Wonderful. Well, we have a couple of questions now from the chat box. And Pierre asks, what about the Cycle Poco camera?
What about it? I have one. I have a couple. What about them?
Well, that's all the question says.
What
About the
What about them?
What time period are they from? Where were they made? Or
mid to late 1890s.
Mid to late 1890s. Okay.
Cycle. I have a 3 and a 4, and the 4 or the 3, whatever it is, there's 2 different ones that have the exact same number. If you're collecting them, all I can tell you is the rarest part of the Cycle Poco camera is getting an original tube with the original bulb. That's all I can. That's
What was that, Lauren? An original what?
the tube, the original tube, and the original bulb for the shutter. That's the rarest part.
Okay, we have further questions. We have from Ian, what period do you collect up to, and why do you not collect after that period?
Well, I collect different periods for different things. If it's memorabilia and ephemera, it's generally up until about 1880, because it's the velocipede and the hobby horse era. But then if you go into photography, it goes up, it used to go up to about 1900. The mitigating factor really is that you can get so much today. I'll use eBay as an example. I'm a proponent of eBay, but it doesn't stop. So if you don't define what your goals are in your collection, you'll wind up with too much of stuff and you lose focus. So for photography, I can put it in slots and take it later, because just like the ladies that were in the circus, that was the mid-20s. But 90% of my collection would be of photography would be pre-1900. 90% of my porcelain collection would be pre-1870. So it depends what aspect of the collection you're considering. And also, these things, we don't know why we collect. We collect because we started with one and it intrigued us and we got a bit more knowledge and that intrigued us. And then we wound up on a path. So why, I'm pleased to answer direct questions, but like the people here that I know, I recognize the name, and they have different interests within our own hobby, be it the photographic part. I know somebody, Bob Lansdale, who collects technical information for the club, but he does it because he's interested. So we wind up collecting what interests us. There's somebody here who's a musician that I know who his interest is not only cycling and cycling history and cycling photography, but it's also being with his friends and the musicians. So we are who we are, and it's hard to answer why we do anything. It's just how we took a different path, I guess.
Hey, Lauren, this is Dave Topham, Granite State Wheelman up here in Salem, New Hampshire. I just wanted to comment, basically, I've learned a lot about photography this evening, and many of the old bikes, some I've seen pictures of, photos of, excellent collection. I have one question to bridge a gap from days of yesteryear to where we are now. I'm getting into the e-bike scenarios, electric assist bikes.
Yeah.
And I've seen that they have been around since like 1895. Never a huge market for them. But did you ever encounter any photography, photos, images, anything of old e-bikes?
Sorry?
Did you ever encounter or find any photographs of e-bikes going back into the 1890s?
The answer is yes. I have one.
Right.
And I also have others that are of that era that were quadricycles. So they're not bicycles as such. They're electric powered, but they're not bicycles per se. It's tricycles.
Okay. Interesting. Thank you.
David, if I could ask you a question. Welcome. How did you find out about us? How did you find out about this talk?
Well, I got involved with your group through Larry Fennison, and I'm the one who donated 50 years worth of Granite State Wheelman newsletters to your collection. Every issue from 1971 till last fall, I was co-founder of the club, and I have every single edition of the printed newsletter for 50 years. That's what I turned over.
Of which one, David?
This is the Granite State Wheelman Bicycling Club.
Say one more time, please.
Granite State
Granite
Wheelman.
State, okay.
So I'm learning a lot through your groups. I drop in as a guest now and again. And again, good work all you folks are doing.
Oh. Well, thank you. Thank you, David.
Hi, Lauren. Thanks so much for the talk. Felix here. I just want to thank you not only for your pictures were of historical importance, but aesthetically, that's what I find most rewarding. It's some of the pictures are just works of art.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much for sharing them.
Well, thank you guys for your time as well.
I have one little comment to make. I found it very interesting that you had that photo of Ruben Sallows. And I didn't know that, I didn't know he had done anything like that. He was an incredibly prolific commercial photographer from Goderich. And a friend of mine actually wrote a book on him. He was fascinating, this guy.
He's spoken to our group.
Oh, okay.
Michael Smith?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
You're right. Sallows produced like 1 million postcards. I'm actually surprised that you only have one, but actually I might be second guessing you here, Lauren. I'm not actually surprised that you have, a Ruben Sallows. You probably have more postcards.
No, I just have the one photograph. I know that person who you're talking about asked me for permission to use the photograph.
That's a great one.
Yeah, it is nice.
Do you find, you know, we happen to be up here in Canada. Is it a little tougher to find Canadian material, Canadian photographic material, cabinet cards, CDVs?
To answer the question accurately, the answer is a simple one. It's yes. But you just have to go to the growth rate of Canada and what Canada was, let's say, in 1890. So I don't know the exact number, but let's say Canada was 8 million. Okay, or 6, just to take a number, let's say 6 million.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take 6 million and it's really 38 million, but let's say 36 million. So it's 6 times the population today in 120 years. If you took America in 1890, you probably had 30 million people. So you had such a base to find things, to have ancestors. And our population growth has been, a humongous amount has been immigration. So just to find it, the answer is more difficult, yes. There are people who like it. My collection I built up because I was in the importing business. I never really looked at developing a Canadian collection. I wanted a collection, and it included stuff from Canada and the world. But when you went out collecting in Canada, looking for bicycle stuff, pre-eBay, I'm talking about if you went out for 2 months to antique shows and flea markets or whatever you went to, if you found a picture, any picture of a bicycle 30 years ago, and it was just something that you could live with, any picture was $35. And those same pictures today, and they are what they are, but they're $10, $15 on eBay at the most if they get a hit. So it's not the answer, I guess, is Canadian photography more valuable, maybe per se, and there are people in Canada who will buy it. So you've got more people wanting it than an American photograph in America as a generic thing. So the answer would be yes. How much more? I think the real bottom line is the quality of the image, like that photograph with the tricycle that Jerry was talking about. That's just a great image to begin with. So the value wasn't because it was a Canadian image. The value was the tricycle with the girl with the doll, and it being a good tricycle. So it's all the things we weigh when we're buying it.
Lorne,
Yes, Buck.
I've got to go. I loved it. It was wonderful. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, so nice to see you. Thanks. But
Hope I'll see you later this year.
yeah, say hi to Judy.
Okay.
Take care, bud.
Thank you for coming.
Hey, Lorne.
Hi, Sharon.
Jeff and I are here.
I saw that. You were on the other side of the screen a little while ago.
Hey, I want to know how many more of these shows you have to do until I see your whole collection.
We booked. I think we have booked like what, 75 shows?
Well, we could simplify this. If we looked at 104 images today and pre-1900 photographs, pre-1900, I probably have 4,000. So you've got 40 more shows. How many a day would you like? But Jeff's been here. You have to get him to bring you up.
I know. We'll have to make a trip up sometime.
We will.
That's great. So, and Glenn, how are you feeling? You're on mute, Glenn, but I'd like to hear how you're feeling. Don't hear you. You're off mute, but now I don't hear you. I surmise that's Glenn Norcliffe. I can't hear him, but he's here. So hi, Glenn.
Lauren, it's Donnie.
Yeah, hi, Don.
Hi, I'm gonna answer Sharon for you. My wife Barbara and I have been friends with Lauren for over 40 years, and we're in and out of each other's places pre-COVID, you know, like all the time. And I've still never seen all of his collection.
Neither have I, Donnie, so it's okay. And I'd like to thank, there's a lot of people here that deserve extra thanks. But on a special thanks, there's a gentleman on, hasn't got his camera on, but his name's Ron Coddington. And he does Civil War photography and has a magazine on Civil War photography. And he recently helped me unidentify a photograph. And we all know that giving yourself provenance for something isn't helpful. So I'd like to thank Ron for, number one, showing up and doing that work for me. And there's also Kurt Shack out west, who's also collects stuff with horses and bicycles and other great imagery. So
it's great to see you, Lauren.
I won't mention John Weiss because he's cautious. So anyways, John's a very special friend. He's the guy who helped me write my introduction today. Wonderful people. Thank you all. And Carl, 35 years. Wasn't that a shock to get that email?
Well, I hope to be in touch with you in much less time than 35 years past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl was one of these guys that you don't know where he found it, but he came up with the treasures of all treasures. And you sold Jack Seaman the cyclometer, that Ritchie cyclometer, and you didn't even know I knew about it, but I haven't forgiven you since.
I have a lot of enemies out there. But you know, one thing I have to say, when you were referencing relationships and how important it is, it's not the stuff, because the stuff comes and goes. And I know that when I was obsessively collecting, I sort of ruined a marriage at the time, lost a lot of friends at the time because I was obsessed. And I think we have to sometimes prioritize the friendships and the relationships and our personal health over the stuff. Mm. We've got to keep it in perspective. That's all.
Yeah, sadly.
Yes. Yeah.
And then if I may add,
yes.
Brian Reynolds is here, another great Canadian bicycle collector. Not so much photography or other quote unquote stuff, but he has some great Canadian bicycles. So that's all of the names that I see that I know personally from. Oh, Maya, how are you, Maya?
I'm very well. I'm awestruck. I loved your talk.
Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
Thank you, Maya.
I learned a lot.
Oh, wait a second. You're just being polite. Maya worked with I believe, AGO and ROM. So
I was the Art Gallery of Ontario. I started the photo collection there. So
yeah. So
long time ago.
Being a little humble. It's tough to be humble when you're that good, Maya.
No, it was a wonderful talk.
Maya, you're always up to something interesting. What are you up to these days?
Well, you know, my last exhibition that I did for AGO, which was the Memory Unearthed, you know, on the Holocaust. It's been traveling throughout United States, and because of the COVID, we've had to put a stop on it, but it's going to be going to Phoenix probably in 2022. So I'm still busy working, even though I've taken retirement, but I'm still on contract or doing work, work as needed be.
Is that what you call retirement, Maya?
Well, I'm also an institutional memory. So, with 48 years at the same institution, and I've had several jobs. I wasn't always in photography. It's very busy.
Indeed.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming out tonight.
So good to see you, Maya.
Oh, it was wonderful. No, I didn't want to miss it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maya.
Yeah.
Hi, Barbara.
Great talk, Lorne.
Thanks, sweet.
Great talk.
And then it's nice to see Kurt.
Oh. Hi, Lord.
Hi, Kurt.
I really enjoyed this evening. Thank you.
Thanks. So everybody who's listening, here's something that Kurt just found. He found a full family photo, and you have to say who the other family was with it, of the Hanlons, the original troupe from the 1860s and 70s. So he just discovered a full family photo of the Hanlons, and he's doing research on them.
Wow.
Okay, explain to us who the Hamlins were for some of us who may not know. Educate us, Lauren.
Well, I know them as they invented a style of bicycle, a pattern, and they tried to get the patent from Pierre Lallemant, or were instrumental in assisting to try and get the patent. But that said, I know that they were one of the most famous troops in the world of acrobats, and got involved with cycling and the velocipede because it was on the stage in France when they went to France in pre the Franco-Prussian War. Wow. How famous they were. They were one of the most famous. But I never specialized in them. I have some images of the Hanlons on velocipedes that are sort of nice images, but I don't know enough about them to tell you much more than just tell you they were around Europe, Canada, and America. Don't know where else they went. So.
Wow.
Well,
So I got a
think I'll
question.
Sign off. Thank you so much for putting this on. Lauren, it's a pleasure. We'll be in touch soon.
Look forward to it.
Cheers,
Thank
Carl.
you. Bye-bye all.
Bye, Carl. So I have a question to all of you guys who collect bicycles. Do you ride them? Do you ever ride the bicycles in your collection?
Well, Brian Reynolds does. Glenn Norcliffe does. Let's see who's still here.
I'm still here, Lauren.
Sharon and Jeff, they ride. Sharon's a good collector. She's tough, but she's a good collector. I did mention Glenn, but Glenn's still trying to yell at me, and we can't hear a word you're saying. So you can call me anything. Buck Peacock's a rider. He's still on the screen.
Glenn, check your microphone connection. See if it's plugged in. It almost seems like it's not plugged in.
You can say anything you want to me, Glenn. I won't hold it against you.
Well, I very quickly want to extend really our warmest gratitude to all of you guys who came over to listen and to see Lorne give such a wonderful presentation of such an exhaustive presentation, right, on the evolution of the vehicle of the bicycle. I learned a ton, right? Those 18 hours we spent together, really, that was awesome, right? Yeah, No, well, this is the thing.
Wait a second. Wait a second, everybody. There's a guy here from Newcastle on Tyne who doesn't know what time it is. His name's Ian Hall.
Totally lost.
Pardon? And what that guy did was he allowed me to acquire one of the great Canadian photographs, one of the greatest Canadian photographs, cycling that I had ever seen. And it was hanging up on his wall. And we did a trade. I saw on his wall only because of a friend in Seattle, a guy by the name of Mike Walker. So Mike introduced me to Ian. Ian and I started to communicate via World Wide Web. I think it was WhatsApp or FaceTime or whatever. And because of our communicating, I could see a bicycle photograph that was really interesting. And he winds up showing it to me. He says, I think this is Canadian. And it's just, you guys have to wait. If you want a treat, I'm gonna get this. You guys keep talking. It'll take 10 seconds and all.
All right. So, well, you get the photograph. I would like to show you guys something very special, and this is really a testament to the work that Lorne has been doing all of these different decades. I just want to share with you this map of all the places where everybody came from today.
Australia.
From Australia, from Scotland, from England, from all over the United States, all over, east to west, Pacific, Atlantic, even the Caribbean is represented here, the Gulf. And that is just really impressive, and it's really humbling to see that the work of a collector can have such a worldwide impact, and that is what you all guys do as collectors, and I gotta say that's fantastic. And there's you gotta be crazy enough to do it, right? And you're gonna sacrifice any sort of living space, right? Because you don't need living space. You got 52 centimeters across, and that's all you need to sleep. That's my philosophy, But I gotta say that's wonderful. And Lorne is back.
Okay.
Holy
so
moly.
This here's the bottom. CWA, Canadian Wheelman Association.
Wow.
Ottawa Bicycle Club.
That's
It's
huge.
it's about 12 inches by 9 inches, this image. It's got the dog, the bike, and it's just a phenomenal. But the frame that it's in is original 1880s, and it's 5 times nicer than the photograph. Really. Anyways, thanks, Ian, again, and thanks.
You're welcome there, Lord.
Any idea who the maker is?
What a lovely sport we have.
Any idea who the maker is of that image, Lorne?
No, it's not identified.
Pity.
Well, I got sound now.
Hey, Glenn, come on in. Welcome. Make yourself at home.
My question to Lorne, we asked about riding, is how many people bicycle today in the snow?
Say again,
Okay,
Glenn,
a few
please.
people.
Well, as I was driving by a few of them, some of the slush may have, painted them accidentally.
What snow? We didn't get any up in Aurelia.
Are you joking, Mark?
No,
Okay. We're sort of Toronto. Some of us are Toronto centric. Yeah, we had about that much snow.
Yeah.
It was great. Obnoxiousness. If you had to knock it off your car at 5:45 this morning, against my religion, and of course by 1 o'clock, 1:30, it was all melted. Yeah, we were even us here in the Great White North were a little bit surprised at that. Mark, buddy, I mean, you're a few hours north of Toronto, in case people don't know, and that is the land of ice and snow. Like, they don't need freezers, you know what I mean? And he got none. He got 0.
I want to just add that I just noticed Frank Kurzawa's name down there as another friend through cycling collecting. I can't see your face, Frank, but thank you very much. We traded some stuff. We visited with each other, and it's just great to see that you're here. Thank you for coming. So I'll wave to you, but I can't see or hear you. But thank you,
Lorne. It was a great surprise to get the invitation to this. We haven't talked in several years, and I really enjoyed the presentation tonight. Visiting with you and your collection a few years ago was a real high point.
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think you brought me some hot peppers, if I remember correctly.
Oh yeah, you wanted some chilies from Texas. I'm the little yellow dot in Austin, Texas on the map that we looked at a minute ago.
Yeah. And considering I go to the Toronto Memory Clinic, how the hell I remember the hot peppers, I'll never know. But
yeah.
This is what our collecting is for us, eh?
Well, you sure taught me a lot.
How's your collection, Frank?
Well, I'm keeping it and I'm treasuring it. I have not been as active the last few years, but I'm hoping as I'm getting to retirement to be able to spend more time to add to it.
Well, that's nice. Well, go for it.
What do you look for, Frank? What do you look for?
Well, I'm sort of a similar mind to Lorne in the sense that I really appreciate the photographic aspects as opposed to some of the other memorabilia. I'm an active rider and racer, but I don't collect the old bicycles so much. And a lot of my collecting interests are more bike racing oriented, more 20th century, early 20th century than 19th century. Although A.A. Zimmerman, that's probably about the place where I really, from there to more contemporary is the time frame that I really appreciate.
Well, thank you very much. Very enjoyable. It's my bedtime, so I'm going to sign off. Good night.
It's not midnight yet, Glenn.
I'm getting old.
Aren't we all?
Bye, Glenn. I'll give you a call.
Ian, thanks for staying up so late, eh?
Yeah.
Well, I'll just say thanks again, everyone. It was a pleasure doing this with you. Bye, Barb. Bye, Donnie.
Thank you,
Hey, Lorne.
Lorne. That was great.
Thank you,
Brian.
Lorne.
Thank you for coming, Brian. It's nice to see you.
Thanks, Lauren. We'll talk
Yeah,
soon.
it was
Thank
great.
you.
It was great.
Thank you very
so
much.
Good night, Ian. Or good
Yeah,
morning,
good night.
Ian.
Good night. I enjoyed it.
Have a good night, everyone.
Well,
good, you know.
Next month, if you're interested, we're going to have the editor of Photo Ed magazine giving her talk about her work in one of Canada's last independently published magazines. That should be a lot of fun. But I want to again thank you for coming out tonight and for staying up so late and in so many parts of the world. What's in the UK right now? Friday midnight or something? I don't know.
oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning.
3 o'clock in the that's just yeah. Right.
It's only 7:30 p.m. It's 7:30 p.m. in San Jose, California, so it's quite all right with me.
Oh, that's okay. All right. So you guys. Lorne decided long ago that he does not sleep. Right? You think he's sleeping? No, he's counting the collection. Right? He's cataloging in his mind. Oh, okay, Karen from New Mexico. Excellent. Well, thank you for coming, and please come again.
Bosh, say hi to Judy for me, please. Can't see you, but you'll do that. Maya, thank you ever so much. Take care,
It
woman.
was wonderful. Thank you.